Okay, so when I see chiropractor, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably someone cracking a sore back, right? But what if that's just the tip of the iceberg? What if there's a much bigger story here about how our bodies work, how they adapt, and, how they stay healthy? And that really is the big question we're digging into today. Is this whole field of care just for those clicks and pops? The muscle and bone stuff? Or could it be a key to unlocking our overall health in ways we haven't really thought about before? Well, to try and get some answers, we are going to unpack a massive scientific review. This thing sifted through more than 2 decades of research. So we're not just looking at one or two studies here. This is all about connecting the dots to see the bigger picture that all that evidence points to. All right, so to really grasp that bigger picture, we've got to start with the body's master control network. I mean, this is the system that runs the entire show. Think about it like this. Your body has its own internal internet, a super high-speed, fully integrated connection that's constantly coordinating everything. Scientists have a name for it, of course, the neuroendocrine immune system, or NEI for short. This is how your body perceives, processes, and responds to, well, absolutely everything, from a tough workout to a seriously stressful day at work. So, this NEI system is basically a three-way conversation that's happening all the time. First, you've got your nervous system. That's the wiring sending instant signals everywhere. Then there's the endocrine system, which uses hormones as its chemical messengers. And finally, you have your immune system, which is like your 24/7 defense force. But the crucial thing to get is that they aren't working separately. No way. They are in constant communication, a seamless team effort to help you adapt and thrive. Okay, so where does the spine fit into all of this? Well, if the nervous system is the wiring, then the spine is the main superhighway. And this is where the research starts to get really interesting. The entire review we're looking at hinges on this one concept called vertebral subluxation, or VS for short. Now listen, this is not just a general term for a sore back. The way the research defines it, it's a very specific spinal issue that's thought to create interference, kind of like static on a phone line, right in your body's main communication highway. And this slide right here highlights a really, really key difference in the approaches. The specific chiropractic adjustment that this research talks about is all about targeting and correcting that one precise vertebral subluxation. The goal? To restore clear nerve communication. Now, that's a very different thing from general spinal manipulation, which often focuses more broadly on just reducing pain and improving mobility in whatever area feels sore. So, this leads to the big question the researchers really wanted to answer. If this VS thing is creating static on the line, could clearing that static do more than just, relieve some local pain? Could fixing that little glitch have a positive ripple effect throughout the entire body? Okay, so now for the good stuff. Let's see what the research actually found. The review took all this data and started looking for patterns, for connections between clearing that static and how the whole body functions. And believe me, they had a lot of data to work with. They started with over 1,400 papers and narrowed it down to 133 key scientific reports that met their super strict criteria. So we're talking about a deep, systematic dive into 20 years of published research here. So what popped out from this massive deep dive? Well, the review uncovered some pretty surprising and measurable connections between specific chiropractic care and these key markers of our health. Let's break down a few of the most significant findings they reported. First up, blood pressure. One study they highlighted was basically the gold standard of research, a double-blind placebo-controlled trial. What they found was that a single specific adjustment to the very top bone in the neck, the atlas, led to a significant drop in blood pressure for people with hypertension. I mean, that's a pretty remarkable finding. All right, next up is something called heart rate variability, or HRV. Now, this isn't just your pulse. It's the tiny little variations in time. We're talking milliseconds between each heartbeat. And it turns out it's a super powerful indicator of how well your nervous system is handling stress and adapting to, well, to life. And this visual here, it shows a really clear trend they found across multiple studies. The data suggests that chiropractic care focused on VS can actually increase your HRV. And look, a higher HRV is a very good thing. It's a sign that your body is more resilient, more adaptable, and just plain better at managing stress. Okay, the review also dove into the immune system. The question was, could an adjustment to the spine really have a measurable effect on our body's defense force? Well, the evidence seems to point to yes. The findings here are pretty compelling, actually. For example, one recent study found that a specific neck adjustment led to a temporary but significant boost in this important antibody called secretory IgA. That's a crucial part of your body's first line of defense against germs. And then there's sleep. We all know how fundamental that is for repair and recovery, right? Well, the review looked at 29 different papers that all seemed to point towards better sleep after chiropractic care. People were sleeping longer, they were waking up less during the night, and these benefits were apparently especially noticeable in kids. So look, these aren't just isolated findings about blood pressure or stress or sleep. When you start to put them all together, they all point towards a different way of thinking about what it even means to be healthy. And that brings us to this really powerful idea the review talks about, salutogenesis. You know, most of medicine focuses on pathogenesis, which is the study of what causes disease. Salutogenesis completely flips the script. It asks, what creates health? It's a huge shift from just fixing problems to actively building a stronger, more resilient. So, what's the bottom line here? The review concludes that there is biological plausibility. In other words, it is scientifically plausible, it makes biological sense that correcting these specific spinal issues could have these ripple effects, these broad, health-creating impacts on your body's entire operating system. Now, the paper isn't saying we have all the final answers. Not at all. Instead, it argues for something called an evidence-informed approach. And what that means is looking at all the available research, from the huge clinical trials all the way down to individual case reports, to make the best possible decisions for each unique person. So, after combing through 2 decades of research, we're left with this really compelling thought. Maybe the spine's influence goes far beyond just aches and pains. This body of evidence suggests that a healthier spine might actually be a gateway to a more resilient, more adaptive you. You know, a you that can better handle stress, recover faster, and truly thrive. It's a question worth exploring for sure.